Shalom, and welcome to the Parasha Pod. I'm Rav Mordechai Rosenberg, here with Rav Menachem Leibtag, and we are talking Torah together. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's time to learn.
Well, wherever you are is a little complicated this week because in Israel we're reading Beha'alotekha, and in Chutz La'aretz we're still in Naso.
That's right.
So we'll try to cover both.
Right. So one question that applies to Naso and to Beha'alotekha is the prevalence of things that seem to not belong in Sefer Bemidbar, but seem to rather belong in Vayikra. Things that relate to the Mishkan, to the Kohanim, Leviim, and one that's very beginning of Beha'alotekha is the Menora, and it's followed by another one which talks about the appointment of the Leviim. So why do we find these things here? Why do we find things in Bemidbar that look like?
But you're assuming. I think we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
But Bemidbar should be primarily narrative. It's a story of Am Yisrael getting ready to leave Har Sinai and then traveling. They should have gone to Israel, and why we don't make it. I think we discussed that last time.
Yeah.
So, and then we mentioned that every once in a while we interrupt this narrative with laws that belong in Bemidbar. Now in Parshat Naso we saw laws that had nothing to do with the narrative, like Nazir and Sotah and Birkat Kohanim. They would, if they weren't there, you would say they're missing. In this week's in Parsha Beha'alotekha, we begin with the law about lighting the menorah, which we had already back in Parsha Tzav and Sefer Shemot. So it's really laws from Shemot, not just Vayikra, but again relating to the Mishkan. And the whole idea of switching the Bechor with the Levi, is that part of the Chet Egel story, or is that part of the Mikdash story?
Right.
Right there. What I want to suggest though is that Beha'alotekha is not actually a law section; it's a story section. That should surprise you.
Well, it does look like laws.
That's right. It looks like laws because God speaks to Moshe and tells him about lighting the menorah. Moshe to tell Aaron about how to light the menorah, but we knew that already.
Right.
But remember, there's a narrative going on, and we pointed out that the narrative in Sefer Bemidbar chronologically begins in chapter 7 with Chanukat HaMizbeach.
Right.
Now, we know from Shemot chapter 40 that dedicating the altar and building the Mishkan was all done on the first day of Nisan.
Right. So this is talking about the latter part of Parashat Naso.
Yeah. So therefore, on the first day of Nisan in chapter 7, we found that the princes, they brought 6 wagons to help the people travel. That's part of the narrative because we're traveling from Har Sinai. Yeah. So donating wagons is part of the travel story. And it's a one-time event.
Right. Dedicating
the Kiddush and that 12-day Kiddush is part of the narrative.
Okay.
And then we got to, then we have it's over 13th, 14th, and then in this week's Parsha, we finished the 12-day Kiddush on the 13th, I guess, of Nisan, and then it's Erev Pesach. So we have just in Parsha, in chapter 9, we have on the 14th, Pesach Rishon. People complain, we have Pesach Sheni.
Okay.
So the narrative is going in order from chapter 7. But if you follow what happened with the princes, what happened on that day, it's the first day the Mishkan is functional. Now, most likely the 12 Nisim that decided way beforehand to make that donation. It wasn't, let's donate something that morning, and they brought 6 wagons and 12 oxen and all those animals for the Kiddush. Rather, this was well thought out beforehand. It wasn't on-the-spot decision. This was well planned out. It's a big housewarming or Mishkan warming ceremony.
Right. And the fact that it's all matching and there's such a large quantity indicates there must have been
well planned out.
Planning,
Now, on that same day, I think we suggested that on the same day that the Nisim brought their idea, and God said that was great, that was good, and agreed, take it and use it for the Mishkan. None of the Nevi'u said, hey, we also had to do something.
Yeah.
And they bring Torah, but they were doing something for themselves as opposed to doing it for other people. And then they did something that God was upset with, and they died. Now, after they died, we had that story about what should the Kohanim do with the meat of the Korban. And there was that beautiful conversation between, that was back in Parshat Shmini, between Aaron and Moshe Rabbeinu. Was it the right thing not to eat the meat of the Chatat?
Right.
And actually, Aaron thought it wasn't right, and Moshe says that God commanded you to do it. And Aaron argued back, it doesn't make sense. And Moshe, you're right. So, because of the tragedy that happened on that day, Aaron can't do everything like normal. The last avodah in the Mikdash is to light the menorah, because the law is you get the candles ready in the morning. You don't light the menorah until the evening. Remember, Erev ad Boker. So the very last avodah, the last service that needs to be done in the temple, is the Kohen lighting the menorah, And on that day was the honor of Aaron to light the menorah. But what might somebody think? Because Aaron on that day lost his 2 children, maybe it's not the right thing for Aaron to light the menorah.
Right.
So therefore, what does God tell Moshe to tell Aaron? That's to light the menorah. Now, to remember, light the menorah. When you light it up, do it the right way, pointing in the right direction. And then we're told, Vayasken Aaron. That was, remember, as God, Aaron did as God commanded. So why do we need to know this? Because even though that tragedy happened that day, Aaron still did it as he was commanded. Because remember, it's just like the laws of Tumah. The Kohen Gadol doesn't leave the Mikdash, even though the tragedy happened. So it could be that if I'm following the story in chronological order, then Parasha Beha'alotekha actually is exactly the next event after Rosh Chodesh, on the last event on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when the Mishkan was dedicated.
And I'm just looking here. How do you know that it's happening on Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Why not say it's happening at the end of the time when all the Nesiim brought their things, like what Rashi says, that Aaron saw what they all brought, and when they're all done?
It's simple. The day the Shekhinah returns is the last pasuk of Sefer Shemot. Is the last psukim of Sefer Shemot. It's when the Shekhinah returns, and that's for sure on Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
Yeah.
And we're told in Parshat Shmini that you bring the special korbanot Yom Shmini because Hayom Hashem Nira Lechem.
Yeah, God's going to appear.
That proves it's got to be the same day. Then we're told in chapter 7 in Parshat Naso that the Nesiim on the very first day brought all the korbanot. That they brought everything together on the first day, and God said 1 a day. At the very end of chapter 7, we were told this is not the summary of what was brought after 12 days. This was brought on the very first day. In verse probably
84.
84. Pedalid. Zot chanukat evzech b'yom himashachoto. This was what they brought on the very day. So we're at the end of chapter 7. We're still on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. In parentheses, this was the order that was brought when God said the day at a time. But at the end of chapter 7, we're still on the first day of the month. It's the first day the Mishkan is functional, and therefore, the next event is the last event of the day is Aaron lighting the menorah, and therefore part of the narrative is Aaron still has to light the menorah even though he's in Avelut, even though he's in Onain that day, and that terrible thing happened.
Wow. Great.
Now,
well, you just connected my 2 favorite parashiyot, Beha'alotekha and Shmini, because one of my teachers, Rav Pini Cohen, he has a question that he sometimes asks people: "What's your favorite parsha besides the Bar Mitzvah parsha?" So that's for me Beha'alotekha, and Shmini is my Bar Mitzvah parsha. Okay. So they happen on the same day. Cool.
And you could have been Parsha Pekudei could also been your Bar Mitzvah parsha. I mean, could have been a favorite also.
Oh, because it's also the same day. Nice. But okay, so I now get why the Menora is here. Because it is happening chronologically immediately after the Nesiim bring their sacrifice. What about the bit about the Levim?
So Levim and Bechorim, that was a one-time event. That's not a mitzvah. It's transferring over the responsibilities of the Bechor to the Levi was a one-time event. It was commanded. And what day was that done? Most likely also on Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
Why then?
Because that's the first day the Mishkan is functional.
But what does it matter that the Bechor were anything before if there's no Mishkan for them to work in?
That's a different issue of what happened beforehand. But the first day the Mishkan is functional,
right,
and that ceremony is done in the Ohel Moed, the Ohel Moed isn't assembled until Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So any ceremony that takes place in the Mishkan and the Ohel Moed can only be from Rosh Chodesh Nisan and onward.
So you're saying it makes sense to appoint the Leviim on Rosh Chodesh Nisan because that's the first day when
maybe
they could get to work.
The decision was made earlier, but the official ceremony has to be on the Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
I see.
And therefore, chapter 8 is also part of the narrative.
Right, I see. Then what about the appointment of the Kohanim? Does that also happen on the same day?
Yeah, so now it's confusing. When was Shevet Levi given this job?
Right.
So there's 2 jobs. Basically, we know from Sefer Dvarim, from the end of Dvarim, that the main job of Shevet Levi is teaching Torah. They were told, remember, Yorum Shvatecha L'Yakov, V'Toratcha L'Yisrael, and then in the blessing of Moshe to Levi, your main job is to teach Torah and to serve God. Now, another proof of that is that when you study the whole book of Deuteronomy, of Sefer Dvarim, the laws section, the main laws from chapter 5 to 26 in Dvarim, is a set of laws that Moshe says were given to him on the first 40 days, that was before Chet HaEgel. And the laws in Sefer Dvarim include a lot of details about Kohanim HaLevim. Not their job in the temple, but rather carrying the Torah, teaching Torah, carrying the Aron. They're shoftim. Remember? Ki belim davar lemishpat ben dam dadan. Okay?
Right.
But you come to the Makom, and you go to the shofet or the Kohen at that time.
Right.
Now, and they're called Levim Kohanim. In other words, a Levi is a whole tribe. When they're doing their job as teachers and educators, they might be referred to as Kohanim. That's a topic for Sefer Dvarim. But the idea is so logical that to be a nation representing God and to be God's people forever, I need to dedicate a whole group of people in charge of education. We know how hard it is to find educators nowadays.
Right.
So instead of giving them land, the entire tribe of Levi gets a job. Now, who's going to support them? 10% of the landowners. All the landowners give 10% of the produce. It's called Maser Rishon. And that's Levi, that's their compensation. It has no holiness to it. That's like money. They can do whatever they want with it. But that's their compensation.
For
and
being
therefore,
educators.
Yeah. Therefore, the main job of Shevet Levi and the Kohanim in charge of that Shevet are to be educators. Then the question comes up, who should officiate in the temple? Now, it seems like originally, when God said, Kadesh Kol B'chor, set aside every firstborn to serve me, meaning, we're limiting service in the temple to a special group, because we don't want it getting out of hand. And it could be God's original plan would be done by the firstborn. After the sin of the golden calf, God realized you can't trust the regular people with the with ritual in the temple, because it gets out of hand. Therefore, what's God decide to do? Let's leave temple service. Leave that to the educators to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. That's why I understand what happened.
Is that because we're assuming that the educators are the most educated, and
they're less likely to turn temple worship into idol worship? Because when temple worship is misunderstood, people think I can buy God with a korban. Just read all the later prophets.
Right.
Now, I need to do something symbolic to remember my connection to God. I'm in the service of God. So therefore, I need what we call korbanot. I need to do symbolic acts in the temple that are transformative, that will make me a better person and remind me of key values. But when I take away the educational aspect of korbanot, and you think like idol worship, IDLE or IDOL, where I can buy God off, I can get rain by just bringing him a sacrifice, or I'll get health by just feeding God some sacrifice, without any effect on how you behave. That's what all the Nevi'im complain about, and that's the danger. Now, I need ritual, I need idol worship, because that was done at the time, to make sure it's educational and proper. Therefore, the Levim, for example, sing songs when they bring Shirat Hayom of Shevet Levi, is when they bring the Korban. So I think God wants to make sure that the temple service doesn't get out of hand.
She's saying the Shirat Hayom, the song of the day, is a form of education. It's like explaining.
It's a Musar Shmuz. Pay attention to them, right? Now, with the Korban, for example, let's the question, who's worthy of coming up to God's house? Mi ale Bahar Hashem. We said that on Sunday, right? Niki kapayim b'var levav. Someone who's straight and right with a pure heart. Asher lo yisad nafshav, who doesn't go astray, etc. In other words, listen to Tuesday. Tomorrow. What's it say? Mismor lasaf el mitzvah baratel. Matai tishpetu avel. Your justice system can't go astray. Can't become corrupt. Tuesday. Elim komat Hashem. God can punish, and beware and make sure to do tshuva. Friday we're too busy to do tshuva, so we talk about God's greatness. But all the other ones are basically rebuke or muster shmuzes.
Wow.
And therefore, part of Levi's job is to sing songs, and basically to make sure that the visit to the temple is educational and not just plain old ritual.
Wow. So the Shirat Hayom is an educational message to go along with the temple service, in order that people remember that when they come to the temple, the focus should be on the educational messages and not on the ritual.
Don't think that you can just feed God and get what you want.
Right.
You need to do something symbolic to remember what your main job is.
Yeah.
That's why in Masechet Tamid it talks about it. When they brought the Korban, they have the whole day-to-day service. After they sprinkled the blood, etc., and brought the animal on the altar, and then they blew the shofar, and the Levim did the symbols, etc., and the Levim opened up with their songs.
Wow, great. Cool. So basically, a similar answer for why
it's part of the narrative.
Part of the narrative. It happened on this day because this is the time when you get going with the Mishkan.
Yeah, there's a bigger question. If that's a much more practical setup, what was the Havamina? Why in the first place? I think the idea that every family should have an educator.
In other words, why in the first place don't they appoint Shevet Levi? Why do they even think about appointing the Bechor?
Because ideally, the Bechor, you wanted someone in every family to be dedicated to education.
Right.
So God says in every family, the firstborn, dedicated to God. So in ideal, that's a big question. Is education begin at home or in the school? Is education done by the government or by the community? Or is education done by the family? Mm-hmm. So our custom is to outsource education to a school system. Nowadays, we outsource parenting as well. And therefore, schools don't educate because they have to parent. They have to indoctrinate. But parents, the school should educate. Instead, they're so busy, parenting the children because parents don't want to deal with that.
I see.
But that's a constant education.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Now we have a bit more time for one of my favorite questions on the whole Torah, really, which is in this week's in Beha'alotekha we have Moshe's breakdown. The people ask for meat, and Moshe just goes to pieces. My question is, why is this the event that breaks Moshe? He keeps his cool at the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. He keeps his cool even next week when the spies happen, when Hashem seems to take it way more seriously and condemns the whole people to die in the desert. But Moshe keeps his cool. But
here he just throws in the towel.
He throws, and he says, "Well, am I their mother that I should care for them this way?" He begs for death. It's really extreme.
Yeah, beg for death. If that's what you want from me, I'd sooner die. I don't think he wants to die, but he said, if that's what you want to do, just kill me now, kind of thing. I don't think he really meant that, but it's a way of saying how he just can't do the job.
Right.
It's called a burnout. We're used to, anyone in education knows the feeling. So this always works out great for me because this Parasha is always at the end of the school year.
Okay,
the yeshiva year. And Moshe Rabbeinu, their educator, has been educating them for a year. They're about to leave Har Sinai. They just left Har Sinai, actually. Mm-hmm. He's been educating them for a year. I understand coming out of Egypt, they complain about the food. Makes sense, etc. After a whole year in yeshiva, you complain about the food? Now, if there was no food, okay, I can buy that. But they have food. They have manna. They don't want yeshiva food. They want to order out.
Yeah.
They're not, it's called, it's the great line at the beginning, hitavu tava. Hasapsu for Shabbat Kirbam, hitavu tava. They had a taiva for a taiva. In other words, they're not hungry. They have food. But they're living to eat. Mm-hmm. And also, what they missed the Egyptian food. They missed what they had growing up. And if you miss Egyptian cuisine and Egyptian food, that's a sign you're missing Egyptian life. You'd rather be back in Egypt, being a slave to your Egyptian masters, but having food on the table and having like a simple life, than dedicating your life to serving God and running things on your own. It's a sign of maybe a lack of maturity as well. So Moshe is an educator after a whole year educating. Now the people complain, not about being hungry, but they don't like the food they're being served. He throws in the towel. And by the way, God answers, you're right. You can't, no, Moshe says, I can't do this. God says, if you want me to do this myself, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. Now, what's God's answer to that?
He appoints the elders.
I say the answer is blowing in the wind.
Okay, go on.
That's what I mean. Chapter 11 is really interesting, but the word ruach is key. Ruach means wind. Right? So what God tells Moshe to do is not to appoint helpers. God doesn't appoint them. God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, share your leadership, delegate. Mm-hmm. And God tells Moshe, gather 70 people that you know are already local leaders. You don't choose who's going to lead. Go to every shevet and ask, who are your leaders? Every group has their leadership group. Take the existing leaders who know their people, right, and work with them, and take your ruach, the spirit that you have. It's now you're not able to deal with it. Take your ruach, your desire, your inspiration, what you have, and share your leadership abilities. Share that with 70 existing leaders. Mm-hmm. And that's hope that maybe that'll work. So, and the word is, God says, ruach, take your ruach and spread it on those other 70, and they'll share with you leadership. Now, we're talking about leadership, about people complaining about day-to-day, like if because again, summer camp's coming up. In camp, there's a bunk counselor, and there's what's called Tzevet Hadracha, and there's what's called educational staff, Tzevet Chinuch. So the job of a bunk counselor is very different than an educator. An educator gives his class, etc., maybe in a camp setting, but the bunk counselor is with the campers 24/7. He sleeps with them in the bunk, he takes care of their needs, and true Torah teaching happens not in class, but rather when you apply it in your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. So the leadership have to be able to deal with people's complaints and use every situation as a growing situation. But that's counseling already. It's called the counselor. And Moshe is saying, when it comes to people's complaints and things like that, I need help. Mm-hmm. God says you should delegate help, and I don't expect you to do it yourself.
Right.
So I think that explains why, as we begin our travel, we're hoping that will be the solution. And also, Moshe sees that his education is not working. Mm-hmm. And the hope is that if he shares his leadership with local leadership, with existing leadership, maybe they'll get the people in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I think that might explain already, that's going to be next week, why God says in Parashat Shlach, before we go and conquer Israel, I want the local leadership. I want to take a leader from every tribe, send them to Israel with the hope that they'll come back and convince the people it's worth the effort. But that's a topic for Parashat Shlach. Mm-hmm. But we'll see, leadership will be a big theme in Sefer Bemidbar.
Right. So basically two reasons. Number one, Moshe is saying, I'm not coping, I can't do it alone. And Hashem says, fair enough, you can't do it alone. Let's appoint some leaders. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is, well, if your educational message sort of like from a top-down approach wasn't working, then let's have a bit of more of a bottom-up approach of like people that are already sort of local level leaders. Mm-hmm. They will take on the responsibility of leadership. So it's like, saying like harnessing the people that may have even been the part of the rabble rousers.
Put them in charge, yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome to help out and we'll do something about it.
Like what happens in government, you have opposition people, mm-hmm. You put them in charge, all of a sudden, hey, now they have to deal with the problems. Instead of complaining about the problems, they'll complain to you now, and you do something about it.
Uh-huh. Right.
Now what's really neat is the same ruach, which is used in Moshe giving over his leadership, God brings ruach, the same word, which brings some wind and brings the quail, the slav, to the camp. I'm not exactly sure why, but for some reason, God's going to educate them in His method. You guys want food?
So ruach is like
ruach comes and brings the slav. And how's God test the people? Are you going to take as much as you need again, or are you going to overdo it?
So you're saying ruach is like the spirit of education.
Yeah, and who's punished at the end? The mitavim. Remember? Mm-hmm. The Asafshu was Itavu Tava, and then Bnei Israel, whoever Israel goes on with that. And then in Kivrot Tava, it's called, who was punished by God? People who took too much.
Right. Do you see that as because they just ate so much after not being used to eating meat that they killed themselves, or that there was something that was like, I don't know, toxic about this stuff, that they like anybody who touched it, was
it was basically it's a really difficult test, like with a hard punishment, is that who got the educational message of the manna, taking as much as you need. Uh-huh. You don't live to eat, remember, you eat to live. Mm-hmm. Right. Which Moshe explains back in chapter 8 in Devarim, in Parashat Ekev, that was the purpose of the manna experience.
Right.
To teach you that you don't live to eat, mm-hmm. You eat to live. So the people just couldn't get it, and just all they did was eat and hoarded it all. Mm-hmm. God said that's it for them, and maybe punishing them was going to teach everyone else a lesson.
I see.
Punishments are pretty harsh in Sefer Bemidbar.
Yeah, a lot of people die.
Yeah, but the question is, do we sit back and judge God for how come He's so harsh, mm-hmm. or do we study the stories to understand what can we learn from them to improve our behavior? But my whole approach is we don't read the stories and sit back and judge God. Whatever the stories are, we study them. We don't study what happened. We study what's written. And then the way they're written usually carries an eternal message about what we learn about our own behavior.
And so, in short, what do you learn about our own behavior from the story of Moshe's breakdown and the people that desire too much meat? That
we don't live to eat, mm-hmm. unless you're running a restaurant. You need it for business. But you don't live to eat, but you eat to live. You need to eat, mm-hmm. but don't make that the goal of your life. If you find yourself focusing on just all about food, and that's the whole focus of your life, you need to eat. But when that becomes the topic of your conversation and your main focus and where you put your money into and you put your efforts into, And that's what you discussed, as opposed to, doing things for society and connecting to God. Then that's an indicator that someone up above ain't going to be so happy.
Right. Do you mind if I just question this a tiny bit? Like, I know it seems like an obvious religious message, but in Kohelet, I mean, it's kind of hard to make sense of Kohelet, but it seems like one of the only times that he comes out with a clear message about something that's a worthwhile way to live is by eating and drinking and being happy with life. I mean, you can argue that that's not the last word, but
he brings up what's called a havamina. That's a question on Kohelet. How do you understand? He brings up, because remember, there's the Nehentan, the one who wants to live life, and the one who wants to get into about wealth, and one about wisdom and things like that. And each one goes through a search. Maybe that's the main thing to do with my life.
Right.
And in the end, they're never happy at the end of the day.
So you see that as not the
Sort of
the
the
last
devil's
word
advocate, maybe something like that. Because I think the bottom line of the book is Sof Davar Kol Nishma Telim Yira. The main thing is fearing God. But I need to go through a whole journey to reach that conclusion. So I can make all the mistakes in life and learn the hard way when I get older, or I can study Kohelet and get the message before I make the mistakes, or as I make them.
Very nice. Yeah. All right then. So the same message, I suppose, comes from here. We don't want to live to eat. Yeah,
and more than that, but the goal is not what you don't do, what you do. If God blesses you with life, what do you do with your life? The goal is not just surviving. You have to have goals and accomplish. Everyone has different strengths. But whatever blessings God gives you, use them in the service of God.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for Leibtag. And so that's Parashat Beha'alotekha and quite a bit of Parashat Naso.
And next week we'll try to do Beha'alotekha and Shlach together.
Very good. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Please like, subscribe, sponsor an episode if you can. And thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom.